Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight on this warm evening. Just a quick little bit of housekeeping from me. I'm Simon from Five Leaves, and then I'll hand over to Bob. Just quick few thank yous. Thank you to the Arts Council for funding this series of events. Thanks for Bob to Autistic Nottingham for joining us for all of these and helping us produce them all. Thanks for Jenny, who's signing for us tonight. On which note, if you need to enlarge her screen during the presentation, there should be a little tab just in the middle of the screen, which if you drag it over to the left, that will enlarge her and reduce the size of the screen a little bit. If you have questions, if you could put them in the Q&A box along the bottom rather than the chat, because they will get lost quite quickly if you do that. Other than that, I think I'll hand over to Bob to introduce properly, and Helen, who's speaking for us tonight. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Before I'd start, I'd like to thank Five Leaves Bookshop for organising these events and inviting us to participate. Autistic Nottingham is a charity which provides advocacy, support and connection for autistic adults without intellectual disabilities. People often ask why without intellectual disabilities. Well, autism as a diagnosis is not usually considered until the individual's behaviour becomes problematic for non-autistic people, otherwise known as allistic people. Autistic people without an intellectual disability find or create strategies to avoid behaviours that make them stand out, believing that the problems come from themselves, and that if they just tried a little bit harder, like everyone else must do, then they'll avoid being ostracised or singled out for bullying. This takes a lot of mental energy to be successful. It's like a constant game of chess that you have to play. You have to do things that are uncomfortable, painful, or distressing in order to make other people happy. And the autistic person thinks this is normal, that everybody else does this, and daily life becomes a constant struggle. But then everyone struggles, don't they? It also doesn't help that there is a stereotype that autistic people have an intellectual disability. And so services for autistic adults are mainly centered around intellectual disability. For diagnosed or autistic adolescents, their support stops at 18. It's a real cliff edge. And for late diagnosed autistics, their support arrives once they've usually burnt out or had a mental health crisis. And that support is usually psychiatric in nature. I'd like to tell you a little story. When I was a child, I lived on a council estate with terraced houses. And from our back window, you could see straight through the house across the way. You could see silhouettes of people moving around inside. And one day, my father spotted the silhouette of their teenage son, who lived there, walking around the room, rocking his upper body. And every now and then, he'd do these 90-degree dips. And my dad was amused by this, and he worked out that the lad did this on a regular basis. So my father basically gave him the name Dippy, and thought that the guy must have some kind of mental health problems to do that. Anyway, a few years passed, and I felt I was old enough to talk to Dippy, and it turned out that he had a passion for reggae music, which he didn't share with his parents. And when they went out, he used to put some reggae on and start dancing rather badly to it. And this really underlines the fact that perception is quite a powerful thing. Much of what society understands about autism are the perceptions of holistic experts on the subject. They look through the window, pointing out deficits and what they feel needs to be done about it. And this is why events like this are really important. In order to understand the autistic experience, it's crucial that you listen to autistic voices. It's through creative expression that opportunities to listen to autistic people are possible, and a space to communicate this experience is offered. So tonight's guest is Helen Eaton. She has written a book called Arna and Ruby, which covers the experiences of two young children and their families and how they get around autism. Anyway, I shan't tell you too much. I'll let Helen do that. So if I can introduce you to Helen.
Brilliant. Thank you. That was really interesting to listen to your perspective, actually, and that story. And certainly I recognise everyone trying to sort of bend themselves out of shape to fit in. I think I'll start with looking at Arna and Ruby. It's probably quite useful to look at how the book ends to start with. So the book ends with quite a distressing scene, but I'm going to take you back to the beginning. Apologies if I whiz through slides here. So close your eyes if it's a bit visually distressing, apologies. There we go. So I am Helen Eaton. I'm really, really pleased actually to be doing this talk. It's wonderful to be invited along. And Five Leaves Bookshop are the only shop, it's the only shop I sell the book through other than through my kind of website, because they approached me and they asked me, and it was the first time I'd consider it. So it's really nice. And they asked me to do this talk as well. So I'm really grateful to Five Leaves Bookshop for doing this, and Autistic Nottingham as well for being part of it. I've spent over 20 years being a management and leadership trainer, and that was talking about leadership behaviours, communication, emotional intelligence, what it is to be an effective communicator, an effective person in a workplace. When I started to learn about autism about 15 years ago, I realised that a lot of what I was saying was wrong. So I've worked with leading brands, supermarkets, banks, IT companies, government agencies, so many organisations. I've trained thousands and thousands of people, but I've really shifted my perspective now that I understand autism. I got interested in autism when my child was diagnosed. I really kind of began to specialise in it. About 6 months old, I realised he was developing a little bit differently to other children, even at 6 months old. And by age 1.5, I'd referred him to a paediatrician, so a children's doctor. And then at 6 years old, he got his diagnosis. And I have 2 other teens as well with lots of autistic traits. So I spend my time being a freelance trainer. I still do management and leadership work. Author, book 2 is on the way, of Arna and Ruby, and I present the podcast as well. And at the moment, I train schools, charities, workplaces, anyone via Zoom. That's the one joy in my life of COVID, is being able to connect with anyone in the world. Before, people avoided online training. Now everyone's doing it, so it's fantastic. And I'm also a neurodiversity at work specialist as well. So I work again with leading organisations, working with them on neurodiversity, how to manage neurodiverse people, how to sort of work alongside and really support and enable them to reach their potential. All my work is about enabling potential and not blocking or locking away that potential. There we go, Arna and Ruby. It's a graphic novel, so it's sort of quite dark, it's comic book style, and the idea of it came over a cup of peppermint tea in my kitchen. Very basic idea. My father-in-law is a fantastic artist, and I was talking to him about, I've always wanted to write, I can never focus, I can never keep myself on track, I get distracted, something over there or over there distracts me. And he went, right, give me the words, I'll draw the pictures. And together we created Arna and Ruby. And it was actually created over WhatsApp. Again, the joy of social media. We just communicated, he lives in Spain, and we just communicated via WhatsApp. I sent him the words and he just created images that worked. And actually sometimes the images made me cry because he got the idea so spot on that it, yeah, kind of reminded me of all the autistic children I've met and I've worked with actually. So Arna and Ruby are all those children merged together. All those traits, ideas and those stories that I've come across, Arna and Ruby. I did it all myself. I think that's probably a really important thing to say, and it perhaps suggests how my mind works. that I was so determined not to work with anybody else, not to get anyone else involved, which isn't great and not particularly healthy, but I was absolutely determined to do it all myself. Maybe it would have been an even better book if I'd got lots of other people involved, but I did it all myself from start to finish, to still putting books in envelopes and walking them to the post office. Start to finish, it's all me, and I'll probably carry on that way actually. So the book is about Arna, who, and it'd be interesting if you can pop any comments in on there if you've seen the book, if you've got the book, it'd be really nice to get your thoughts actually. So Arna is really sullen, he appears quite withdrawn, he's unwilling to make friends. His parents are really frustrated and really quite angry. They don't understand his behaviour, they just don't recognise that child in front of them. Ruby is quite different. She's bright, she's bubbly, but at school she's hiding her true nature in order to fit in. She is just not being herself. She's masking, she's pretending that she's the same as the other girls. She's trying to match the other girls, and she just doesn't show that personality in school. It's only really her mom who sees that brilliant personality. And the book takes you through the two families' experience. So looking at Arna's parents, who are really angry, really frustrated, and then looking at Ruby's mom, who is like Ruby, happy and joyous, and really gets her daughter, really understands what's going on, and is a brilliant sort of source of knowledge for the other family as they try and figure it out. And there's a nice intergenerational moment where Arna's parents are talking to his grandparents, who, you know, they talk about autism being real or not. And there's a kind of debate about whether it even exists. So it's that intergenerational argument, you know, older generations perhaps not recognising the challenges that Arna's facing, or the challenges the world is presenting to Arna. Because I think that's the perspective really I come from a lot more. So it is a graphic novel style. So it starts off quite dark, and that's the family's journey. The family's journey is quite a dark journey initially. They're frightened, they're scared, they don't understand it. They don't know if autism means tests or treatment, prodding and probing. They're really concerned. So the artist, Chris, really kind of wanted to set that tone of, like many graphic novels, it's a little bit frightening, a little bit daunting. What does autism mean to them? But there's quite a lot of light moments in the book as well. And this is often when I'm training how I describe autism. There's set traits that every autistic person will have to differing degrees, because that's how you get a diagnosis. You have to match a sort of a checklist of challenges or difficulties. But they mix in, it's a unique mix for every autistic person. So it's as though the ingredients are coming off the shelf, put into a big mixing pot, and then you create each wonderful, unique, fantastic autistic person. But those key characteristics are there, those key challenges are there, because that's kind of how the brain is functioning or wiring. But it is a unique mix for every person. So you always say, you've met one autistic person, you've just met one autistic person, that's it. Everybody's kind of different, but with those common challenges maybe. And I loved, when I saw this image, I loved the joy that Ruby sort of brings. Ruby's obsession, special interest, passion is cats. So cats are everywhere. Cats on her clothes, cats in her room, cuddly toys, cats, cats, cats. And the fact that she's celebrating autism is her kung fu, her superpower, her strength, really comes from a place of pride and enthusiasm and enjoyment about autism. Ruby's kind of got it, she feels good, but still has that barrier in public, in school, where she's still feels she needs to mask. So outside of school, she's herself, she's so proud of kind of the way her mind works, but in school, she's still hiding that. And I love the joy, the moments of joy that Ruby brings to the story. Arna's a bit different. Arna's not quite so happy. Arna's quite frustrated. And this scene comes from Arna worrying about starting secondary school. So he's worried about everything. He can't imagine what it's going to be like. And nobody's actually told him. So his parents have sat and discussed results and sport and uniform, looking smart, and there's a bus that can get him there. So they have discussed everything to do with what works for them and what's important for them. They've forgotten to talk to Arna. So Arna has an absolute meltdown, so an explosion of emotions, because he's so worried and so panicked, he just can't cope with the notion of going to school. And the next page, you see him being sort of physically dragged. His mom's got his arm and pulling him into the school gates because he's so overwhelmed. He hasn't even started his first day yet. Very typical for lots of autistic children, not knowing what's coming, just that big overwhelm when they just realise, oh, gosh, this is too much. And these are some of his thoughts. And again, talking to lots of autistic children, I can see where these come from. If you look through some of the questions there, I'll give you a moment to read. I'm always talking over people when they're reading. Give you a moment to look through. There's lots of stuff going on, isn't there? He's worried that everyone will be huge and scary. Doesn't know where he'll catch the bus. Doesn't know where he'll get off the bus. Where will he sit on the bus? The clothes are going to irritate him. Does he have to have a shower? He hates getting undressed at school. How does he get his food? How does he pay? He only likes cheese sandwiches. Can he sit on his own? All this stuff is whirring around. But the thing about Arna is it's all in his head. So none of it's coming out. He's not telling his parents. He's not telling teachers. He hasn't got friends to tell. So all of that is in his head. So we can kind of see why these massive explosions occur. Because if that's all in your head and there's no support, no one to kind of share and bounce those ideas off, because nobody thinks to ask, Arna is going to have a big explosion. Like so many other children, he's absolutely going to be overwhelmed. And school for him, before he started secondary school, was absolutely terrifying. And to be honest, it wasn't much better when he got there either. As I said, kind of that's the end of the story, really. That's the image the book ends on. So it's leading into book 2. We're left with Arna really just hating school. He gets lost in his devices. So playing games is very much part of his world on devices and TVs and consoles. And he's lost in those games. And that features a lot as well in the book, where his safe place is playing games, because he's not having to deal with the issues, the challenges, the overwhelm. He can just lock into a device, play a game, and he's away and in a safe place. Ruby just sitting in her room, just enjoying her own world. So Ruby's very much locked into that kind of joy and that pleasure around cats and all her own stuff. And again, she hasn't got a close friend to share that with, but her mum's pretty sort of keyed into what she needs and what she wants. My ideas for the book were to show 2 children, different perspectives, struggling in different ways. So although Ruby might appear as though she's fine and coping, inside, there's a lot she's hiding. Arna is chucking everything he feels out at the world. He's not articulating, he's not telling people, he's not naming his difficulties, but it's coming out in the stuff he does. I think, you know, scrawling "I hate school" on your door is a bit of a clue that he's not in the best place, really. That was my thinking through Arna and Ruby then. 2 children, 2 very different children, 2 different families learning together. And the middle section of the book is as though they're attending a conference together, a talk together on autism. So I call it the technical information, or the medical stuff, or the accurate stuff about autism. The factual stuff kind of sits in the middle. So all the information about diagnosis and sensory needs and some of the challenges and some of the support ideas sit in the middle of the book. But even with that journey, we still get to Arna not being in a great place and Ruby still locked into her own world. But book 2, very excited, book 2 is kind of almost there. I can clutch it. I'll bring it to camera. Book 2 is currently sitting here. So that's kind of at the start of the first page. This is how we work. So it gets emailed to me, and then I'm going to sneakily just do that. That's it. Okay, no more than that. I might give you a bit more. Ruby's grown up a little bit. In book 2, Ruby is interested in a pop band. She's really interested. She's got her cat still, but she's got a new interest. And like many autistic children, she knows everything. It's her absolute passion and focus. It's what she thinks about. It's what she talks about. And even the things she would normally do, like here, going to put the Christmas tree decorations. No, she's got her pop band. That's what she's going to spend all of her evenings doing, focusing on nothing but that special interest. So this is in book 2, where she's grown up a little bit. big draft stamped across the middle, so it's still in work in progress. There's Arna on his own at lunch with the noise and the banging and the smells of the food and all that stuff that overwhelms him. And Arna and Ruby connect a little bit. So Ruby kind of still smiling, and there's a story behind the Christmas jumper. That's the secret of the book. There's quite a good story behind that Christmas jumper she's wearing. It's quite key in the book. You know, she's still smiling, she's still checking in on Arna. How are you? How are you doing? So she's still putting out that face of, I'm okay, I'm fine. But inside, as you see in the book, actually, she's really struggling because her peers, her classmates are targeting her, leading her astray. She's making bad choices. She's falling out with her mom because she's got this influence of those friends around her. So I think book 2 is exciting, really pleased. And we've learned a lot for book 2 together over WhatsApp. We've learned a lot about how to do this right and how to do this better. But we've got, again, this story of 2 children they're struggling because the world around them isn't getting them. The world around them isn't offering the support, isn't offering them what they need, and they're just kind of battling through it. So that's book 2. I think I've covered everything about the book, kind of the ideas, the thoughts, and the 2 brilliant characters, Arna and Ruby. And it's really packed with information. It's like a textbook, or imagine you've got a book of, 500 pages, I don't know, a couple of 100 pages talking about autism. I've squashed it into a graphic novel, and then book 2 carries on squashing more really useful stuff in, but via graphic novel. And I've tried to keep the language quite accessible as well. So the sentences are very short. There's no particularly complex language. There's no complicated words. So lots of people can access that. And I would say older children, teens, adults, really useful for, but I've kept the language as accessible as possible. So I think that's me saying everything about the book. I know Bob's got some questions for me now, so I'm quite excited about this. Bob, are you still there? I'm going to stop my share. Oh, I'm on my own still.
I'm back.
Hey, hello.
Hi. Thanks for that, Helen. I've had I got a copy of the book, and it's great. I love the look and feel of it. I like the graphic novel side of it.
Yeah.
Now, was it just purely coincidental, or was there a drive to produce it as a graphic novel? I know a lot of autistic people like graphic novels.
I think my father-in-law had a sense it would be good for the autistic community, I think. And for me, I found it a more accessible way to present the information. And it is really surprising how it's worked, that I do just present the words and he just brings back the image, and it's right every time. It's like a bit of magic going on. He's such a good artist, and it's just a blank, it's just a piece of A4 paper, and I just send him this scene, that scene, and he just creates that. But the style is very much his, so I don't input into the style, the creativity. It's not my thing. I really wouldn't be good at doing that. So the style, the imagery, everything is him. The words, the knowledge, the content is kind of my mind, and we've just met in the middle.
Yeah. And also in terms of the opening, they're being horrified about their child being diagnosed as being possibly autistic. I think another thing about the book, which is really quite impressive, is the way that it kind of portrays the facts, but also shows the implications of those. I think a lot of parents tend to look at websites like the National Autistic Society. They get this bare, this is it, it's a difficulty with that, deficit in that, alongside pictures of odd-looking people. Again, was this something deliberate?
I think there was, because actually a lot of families, there's 2 bits to answer there. A lot of families are really frightened of autism because of what they see in the media, because they don't understand actually the joy, the amazing minds, the amazing ideas, the amazing abilities of autistic kids, because they are looking at things from a different perspective. Their mind's kind of processing the world slightly differently. And you get these unique individuals. Some of them might not be verbal. Some of them are really articulate and bright and creative. But parents don't know that. They just are terrified of the word autism. They're really scared. And the worst thing I've heard said to me is, I don't want an autistic child. I don't want a disabled child. And, you know, I kept calm. I didn't kind of flare up at that. Yeah. I went, you've got the fantastic, wonderful child you've got, regardless of those labels that you're so frightened of. You have that brilliant child. Let's work to understand that child kind of better. But looking at that, I think the implications and I want to look at the human response actually, and the Arna's parents, just that anger and that frustration because they don't understand. And I think, and then comparing that to Ruby's mom, who gets it, who knows it, who loves her daughter, and really is kind of there, and her daughter is her daughter, and that's it. So I wanted to contrast the two of somebody who's got it and knows and is fine, and it's just her child. It's not an autistic child; it's her child, full stop. But those other parents with the fear and the terror and the misunderstanding, I wanted that contrast.
Yeah, and I think that's another aspect of it where Arna's parents begin to realise that they need to connect in some way. I'm not going to give the story away, but they seemed a lot happier and gelled better once they actually tried to look at it from the child's perspective and carry out on with the child's interests. Interesting you mentioned about the I wouldn't like my child to be autistic. Yeah. I mean, this was really part of the issue with the vaccines going back to the late 90s, early 2000s. Vaccines don't cause it. And the issue was, though, even if they did, would you rather than, be disabled by measles instead? Oh, yeah, that's far better than them being autistic. And autism has got, No, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, autism has got quite a longish history, in terms of the medical side of it. There was 1940s and 50s, the work of Kanner, who was basically looking at intellectually disabled children. And then it gradually developed that they started to become adults, and then we started to get autism advocates in the sort of 80s and 90s, and all the stuff that the likes of Simon, I got it right, not Sasha this time, Simon Baron-Cohen.
Yeah, that's his nephew. Yeah.
Yeah, and these of course have huge implications on how parents view autism when they have all these scare stories. And the other bit I loved about was you mentioned it earlier about the grandparents, and how we got this boom suddenly in autism, yet we didn't seem to recognise it back in the old days. You want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we were chatting earlier about this, weren't we? And I said that I look at my dad now. My dad has passed away, but I would say he would be autistic. He led a really simple life. He dropped out of school at 14, never assessed, never took an exam, just played at school, joined the family business, did exactly the same job until he retired at 65. Actually, the typical notions, ate the same food, wore the same clothes, really happy, easygoing, kind-hearted man. No friends ever visited the house. I never saw him go to the theatre. I never saw him eat in restaurants. I never saw him change his routine. And he was really happy. But actually, towards the end of his life, when life got really complicated and everyone got more social and there were more pressures, he did have a breakdown because the world got too much for him. It was just too overwhelming. But he got through most of his life really merrily because none of that mattered. He didn't have the pressures to socialise or social media or connect or do this and that. He just did a good job. He was a good dad, and his mind kind of fulfilled his role. But when everything started kicking in and the pressures and that's when he had a breakdown. And I realised now that he'd kept a simple life, and that was fine. And it's only because the world shifted that he struggled. The world wanted more from him. There were more pressures on him in his retirement. that actually that the way the world was functioning wasn't right. So I don't blame his autism or him. I blame kind of demands of the modern world now, actually, that broke my dad ultimately in his 70s. And sadly, he passed away a few years later. So I think the world isn't working in the best way for kind of our brilliant minds.
And of course, there's the issue of the concept of masking as well, which a lot of late diagnosed autistic people have had to go through now. Once it reaches a point where you can't cope anymore, all is revealed. But there was a really interesting still in that book. Ruby's the masker. Arna isn't, and they were friends before they go to school. And there's one still in particular where Ruby's carrying a mask on a stick, and she's talking to some other girls. And along the corridor, there's Arna, and she kind of ignores him, as if to say, "I don't want to be like that," in front of her friends, and that's always quite a difficulty. I know females mask more than males. They say there's one for every one female, there's 4 males diagnosed. But camouflaging is something that females do quite a lot, and also males do too. I've lost my track on that. I didn't know where I was heading.
No, that's fine. I can kind of add to that, actually. I do see female. I think it's what society is demanding without kind of getting lost in gender arguments. I think it's what society is expecting, a certain area of society expecting from male behaviour and female behaviour. So I worked with a man recently who he said he struggled to mask, and what he did was he worked in a company. He said when they worked out it was a bit different, I left and got another job. And he said, but I'm running out of places to work. And he said, I don't want to travel far, but I'm stuck but that's not him being wrong. That's a lack of tolerance and him not. And he said, I can only hide my quirkiness for so long. He said, I can only hide who I am, and then people figure out I'm a bit different. And he felt embarrassed and he quit, and that's so sad. But masking, I would say I've masked for the majority of my life. And when I train about leadership stuff, I'm perhaps a different person. When I'm talking about autism or I do neurodiversity at work, I'm much more bubbly and bouncy, and I say stuff that is in my head and that I think is great, and I share my distractions and I share everything. And I still don't fully let me out, but I let me out a little bit when I'm talking about autism and stuff. But when I'm in professional mode, and for years, that's not there. I'm mirroring what I think the other trainers are doing, and that, and that's not okay. But that's what I felt I've had to do for a very, very long time, is not let out me and the things that I want to say and the ideas I have and all the stuff I want to share. I keep it in. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
It's really tiring. But I'm much more comfortable with who I am now. And my family and my friends. Actually, I'm really relaxed, and I have far less migraines, far less stress, far less anxiety, and a much more positive life, because I'm a lot more freer in terms of who I am and the way I think than I was in my 20s and my 30s. That suggests I'm now in my 40s, which is correct.
Whoops.
That's fine. I'm proud of it.
The other aspect of it as well that was cool was the planning that it has to go into. You got Ruby's parents that have had time to absorb what's happening, and her first day of school, she's got her bags, everything, still nervous, but Arna goes absolutely bananas. Now, did you how much of that comes from your own experience with your children? Absolutely. So my kids are great in that we travel to lots of different countries. We do a lot of stuff, but it's because of all the work that I've done beforehand and my husband's done beforehand. So we talk about stuff very openly. We talk about what they might be worried about. We talk about social anxiety. We talk about stuff that makes it easier for them. So
it used to be things like carrying ear defenders, carrying favourite clothes, wearing favourite scents, making sure we knew what food we could eat or taking it with us. So we prepared them so much. And actually, I think because they've been exposed to so much, they're very tolerant of change and adapting, actually.
Yeah.
But we stretched them really early on from an early age and really kind of encouraged, but a lot of work beforehand. And where some people might spend 12 hours in a theme park, we would have spent 4. Where somebody would have, you know, spent all day at a party or a wedding, we would do shorter chunks or just the bits that were important, step out, calm down and go back in. So we adjusted how we enjoyed stuff and we adjusted the preparation. But yeah, that very much comes from my experience. And I still live that every day. Every day I'm thinking ahead for what's coming next, what might make them anxious. If they can manage it themselves, they've got lots of tools to do that. Brilliant. I let them manage it themselves. But where I think I need to scaffold or support, I very quickly step in. So when they get angry, cross, frustrated, swear, I know they're struggling. And I go, okay, right, okay. And it's purely that, you know, that it's a very noisy house. And I step in and go, okay, right, what's coming up? What are you anxious about? And then together we kind of work it out. So I guess now they're teens, I'm hands off, see how they do, but step in. So I love it and they're my children, but that is also tiring. It is, I can't lie, it is very tiring, but it's worth it because they're pretty phenomenal. So
yeah, that's definitely what autistic parenthood is all about. Well, you know, it's a case of from your own learned experiences that you teach your kids how to bring in coping strategies and how to make things a lot easier for them.
It surprises them. I just pause it. It surprises a lot of adults. So they go to places. So, for example, a cadet unit, and the cadet leader said, "Wow, your sunset looked a bit uncomfortable." When I asked him, he said, "Don't worry, I'm just a bit anxious, but I can manage it." And he was so impressed that a 14-year-old could say, "A bit anxious, but I've got it. Don't worry." And he said, "I just thought, well, I'm here if you need me." And I said, "No, I've got it. I'm fine. Just a bit anxious." And he was really impressed actually that he was able to say, "I'm anxious, but don't worry, I can deal with it." Because we've just been open about it and, you know, shared our own experiences and recognised anxiety and social anxiety and what to do with it.
Yeah. And the other thing as well is the issue with trust. You know, that's very, very, it's a huge thing for autistic people to be able to trust other people. And they often trust the wrong people, but once you can build up that trust, then you can certainly open people up to autistic people up to new experiences. And I'm the same with holidays. My wife organises all the holidays, and she does a fantastic job, and I really enjoy them. Yeah, you know, there are other people I've gone on holiday with, and it's they really haven't thought about me.
Yeah, I know. Actually, I have a little cheat. There's always a place that we start off on holiday. So we start our holiday in the same place. We settle into holiday and then we can go anywhere. That's what we've done for about 8 years is we go abroad a lot, but we always start in one country, in one same place. We all know it. We have a good time. And then we can do what we want to do. So there's little tricks that make life easier for all of us. We know the restaurants, we know the food, we know the people, and then we get a bit more adventurous.
That sounds great. Always got a place of safety. That's very important. Yeah. Hiding underneath the table.
We've had a lot of that over the years. I think because I've witnessed so many meltdowns for my own kids and other people's. I've had the hiding under the table, the tears, the tantrums, the broken stuff. The rage, the running away, you know, again, that's the pressure that the world have put on my kids and other people's kids. You know, it's them just going, wow, this is too much. But, you know, as a parent of autistic children, I have carried them through that and really push back on the world a lot, actually, and go, it's the world doing this to my kids. It's not my kids doing this to the world. When they're hiding under the table, there's a good reason for it. You know, and if they've lost their temper, got really frustrated at school, there's a good reason for it. They're not doing it for fun.
Yeah, and meltdowns again. That's you know, often confused for tantrums and things like that. Completely uncontrollable, and lots of different guises as well.
Yeah, meltdowns. Can look really different, can't they? So meltdowns can be sort of tearful over. It's any overwhelm, isn't it? So crying or tears or it can be that very explosive self-harm or harming each other, other people or throwing stuff or destroying stuff. But I know in that moment that's a meltdown is healthy, because it's a reset for the brain, isn't it? The brain's gone.
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed. This is too much. And it's that survival instinct kicks in and says, right, I need this to stop. And I guess kids learn, how can I make this stuff? I'll chuck a load of stuff around the place. How can I make people back away? Well, I'll scream and I'll shout. Or they just lose that control and all that kind of base instincts come out. Because the brain's resetting, I think, in my perspective, the brain's resetting, rebooting, and it just needs to calm down, and then kind of day-to-day life carries on. But I think meltdown is a survival instinct, because the brain's going too much.
Too much, yeah. Yeah, generally there's no sort of agenda behind a meltdown. It just happens, and you know, you get very embarrassed about it afterwards, particularly as an adult. But there are what they call the rumble stages. Have you sort of heard of that? What they call the rumble stage?
Warnings, almost like little tremors or the earthquake.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you can feel the tremors, and you know, certainly as an adult, that it's time to go and find a quiet place, because this is just going to get out of hand eventually. Yeah. Mine's usually swearing at computers.
I overtalk, I over-explain. So I got trapped in a supermarket recently, and I haven't really had a meltdown for years, but I was surrounded by people I felt were breathing on me. I was in a queue, it was really stressful. And I tend to find myself over-talking. I'm like, time to just walk. But again, you know, my children are great, because when they feel it build, actually they'll take themselves off and do what feels good. So my son will ride his bike in the garden, or he'll practice kung fu, or he'll hit something with a stick. He has a lot of sticks and clubs, and he just waves it around the garden and stuff. So he recognises those rumbles in himself, and will 90% of the time take himself away and just settle by hitting things and throwing stuff around in the gardens. That's fine. Or riding a bike.
But the thing is, when you're not diagnosed, these things become, what the hell's going on wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Why am I doing this? And, you know, okay, well, I think I've run out of questions. Have we got any questions in the Q&A? Let's have a look.
I guess these are for both of us, aren't they?
Yeah. Right. One here from Karen Neal. Can you say more about how you equip your children to cope with social anxiety?
So shall I pick up that one first? Yeah, for me, it's about being very honest about what it is and what it feels like. And I sometimes say, you don't have to say yes to everything, but you don't have to say no to everything. So that's the rules we work on in our houses. You don't have to say yes to it all, but you also don't have to say no to it all. I help them kind of understand about, I think, to reduce social anxiety, I prepare them for the situation beforehand, and I try and give them positive experiences. And I sometimes say, in that situation, you might be feeling socially anxious, but you can still do it. So when you're anxious, it means it matters, or it's important to you, or, you know, this is an important thing for you. And sometimes we carry that anxiety, and we can still do stuff and be social and achieve, and carry a bit of anxiety. And then afterwards we can go, do you know what? I did that. That was okay. That was quite good.
Yeah.
But I'm very careful about the social situations. If it's something new, I test it carefully, make it a positive experience, and then they can run with it.
Also, there's aspects of boundary setting in there as well, isn't there? Which I think is key.
It is. And thinking about what's expected of them, and maybe they feel socially anxious because of what everyone else expects them to do, and they don't think they can meet that, which is really fair. Because they say, well, I talked to my daughter and I said, well, what do you think that trip to the park is? It's just you turning up and playing with your friends and coming home. You don't need to worry about judgment and thoughts, and this might happen and that might happen, and people might think you're this and people might think you're that. Just go, enjoy, come home, job done. It's easier than, it's not as easy as that sometimes, but that's my message is stop over worrying, stop thinking, just go, be you, and do, and then come back. And manage those, as you say, manage those boundaries.
Yeah. And your own personal boundaries as well, how far other people can step is very important. Yeah, which a lot of autistic people don't know how to lay down. And they end up overpromising, getting into trouble with other people, and just because I think that's how you make friends.
Yeah, you're right, actually. So learning, when I deliver talks to families, I always say, look at good positive relationships on TV shows, or or in the media, and talk about what a healthy relationship looks like with a friend or with family as well, because family can be just as bad or worse, or partners. Look at what a healthy friendship looks like, sharing and saying no and what's acceptable, as you say, boundaries, and talk about it in a really open way. Because if you don't, our autistic kids are really prone to be taken advantage of, to be bullied, and are very vulnerable at times because they do trust. And they're not, they're not setting out with bad intentions. They don't always see them in other people. So boundaries and what a healthy relationship looks like is really important, definitely.
We got another question from Shelley Wallace.
Yeah.
It says, I'd be interested in learning about the process of ideas and development of the narratives of the book. Thanks.
I might be the worst person to ask, because my brain goes bing, 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 chuck it on paper, tidy it up, and then my ideas bounce. Though I would love to give you a process. It could be anywhere, anytime, and I just go, thought, stick it on paper, and then I tidy it up at the end so it makes sense. So years of training, I'm used to taking loads of stuff and kind of repeating it in a more sensible way. So I learn stuff and then it comes out my mouth. So I do that in my writing. I chuck all the stuff down and then I tidy it up so it makes sense. That's my process. That's it. Really sorry.
A bit like Kung Fu. It's better when you don't think about what you're doing.
Yeah. Funny enough, I've got a house of Kung Fuers. Not me, but there's a house of Kung Fuers behind me. It's more structure. Actually, that's a good point. Actually, putting something like Kung Fu or yoga or something physical where there's structure and movement and calm, fantastic for autistic people quite often. Be it meditation, yoga, Kung Fu, Tai Chi, whatever is really helpful. But
it certainly helps with the ideas of proprioception and balance and things like that. It might take longer to learn a martial art, but it really is worthwhile. Okay.
I think there was a question in chat, sorry, but I don't think it's the best place to answer it. So the question is, do you have any info on the legal rights of people with autism? I guess there could be 1,001 questions there potentially, and it might not be the best place to answer them, but I don't know if you have any good kind of resources.
We could certainly look at that. I mean, essentially the Equalities Act 2010, and there's also the Autism Act, which doesn't really seem to have done much, to be honest. I'm still not entirely sure what it's all about, but certainly the Equalities Act, in terms of disability and how you get treated at work. But it's certainly something that needs to be worked on.
Yeah, it is. It's a protected characteristic, isn't it? And in terms of disability discrimination, autism will fit under that in terms of a protected characteristic. But there's a requirement for a requirement for reasonable adjustments. There's all sorts of things linked to that. So it's a big topic, really.
Yeah.
Most places fail. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I think that's enough said.
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, it is a communication difficulty, and the onus is definitely put on autistic people to do the hard work in terms of breaking down these communication barriers.
Yeah.
But a lot of work that's been done recently has shown that autistic people communicate extremely well with each other, no problems, in the same way that non-autistic people do. But it's when you mix the two together, something goes wrong. And it's often a case of where your priorities, your ethics, your view of how the world should be tend to be quite different. For instance, hidden agendas. Holistic people often have a hidden agenda with any kind of conversation, whereas autistic people don't. Yet non-autistic people, sorry, Jenny. whereas non-autistic people tend to think that autistic people have a hidden agenda when they haven't, and vice versa.
I think my biggest struggle is if it's in my head, I want to share it because I like sharing knowledge. But some people take offence at the things I share and they tell me it's not appropriate. That's really challenging because I'm just trying to help. And if I know, instinctively, I want to go, well, here you go, have my facts, my information. But apparently it's not always appropriate at times, according to people who are not autistic anyway. And then
they end up telling us about the weather. And of course it's funny.
That's a really good point. When I'm delivering, I did a leadership training event this morning. The first thing I talked about was the weather because I felt it was a good way to start the conversation. What I actually wanted to do was say, wow, look at all the birds on my bird feeder. And I watched this last night. And did you know? Instead, I say, gosh, it's very sunny outside. I think it's going to snow next weekend. That's me masking.
Yeah, I had something similar, unmasked really. Somebody was, when we had that really, really cold snap a few years ago, and it's really, really cold today. And I just said, it's down to stratospheric warming, which has bisected the polar vortex, leaving two cold masses above. And they just looked at me and said, right, thanks, Bob.
I feel that pain. I've learned, I just think they don't need to know. They don't want to know that. Fine, I'll keep it in here. Or tell my poor children, my poor husbands. They get a lot of my stuff directed at them because nobody else will listen. They're very tolerant of me.
Oh, that's good to have. Okay, well, I don't think we have any more questions. And I think Jenny's probably very worn out at the moment.
I'd say super, Jenny, thank you.
Yeah, you've done a great job, Jenny. Thank you very much. And thank you, Helen. And again, thank you, 5 Leaves.